1. What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars steps into a daytime studio expecting smiles and softball questions, only to face a verbal ambush that shakes the walls of television? You're about to see exactly that, a fiery clash where Tom Cruise's legendary composure was pushed to the breaking point. Before we dive into this explosive showdown, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and drop a comment below telling me if Tom Cruise was out of line or if Joy Behar pushed too far. Because trust me, once you see how this glossy morning interview spiraled into a full-blown studio meltdown, you're going to have some strong opinions. Now, let's get back to the video. The atmosphere on set that morning was unusually thick, almost as if everyone knew trouble was brewing before a single question was asked. Cruz walked out flashing that polished movie star grin, the kind that had charmed audiences for decades, and settled confidently into his chair. He thought he was there to talk about his latest Mission Impossible film, trade fun stunt stories, and maybe crack a few jokes with the hosts. But beneath the smiles of the panel, something far more dangerous was waiting. Whoopi Goldberg opened the segment warmly, playing her role as the steady hand trying to keep the show professional. She praised Cruz's blockbuster track record and welcomed him back with enthusiasm. Cruz leaned forward, grateful, and began thanking the hosts for having him, already buzzing with excitement to talk about his film. But the mood shifted in a heartbeat when Joy Behar, sitting across with a sly smirk, leaned in like a hunter about to spring a trap. "Tom, before we get to your little action movie," Joy began, her tone sharp as glass, "we need to address the elephant in the room. Your personal beliefs and how they affect your career choices." The words landed like a slap across the studio. The audience gasped, and even the other co-hosts froze for a split second, their smiles slipping away. Cruz's megawatt grin faltered just slightly before he steadied himself again, but the tension was already climbing. "I'm here to talk about the film," he replied firmly, "and my personal beliefs are exactly that, personal." His voice was controlled, but there was a steel edge hiding beneath the politeness, a warning sign of what was to come. Joy leaned back in her chair, clearly pleased with the discomfort she had stirred. She wasn't interested in movies or stunts. She wanted a fight. "Oh, come on, Tom," she pressed. "You're a public figure. You make millions, and people deserve to know what kind of man they're supporting." That line hit the audience like a thunderclap. Murmurs broke out across the room as Cruz's jaw tightened. "I think people have a right to be entertained," he shot back, his tone sharpening. "That's what I've dedicated my career to, bringing stories to life that inspire and excite people all over the world." Before Cruz could finish, Whoopi quickly jumped in, desperate to calm the storm, suggesting they circle back to the film first. But Joy snapped back coldly. "No, Whoopi, this is exactly what we should be talking about." She turned her eyes back on Cruz like a predator locking onto prey, her smirk widening as she declared, "He's been dodging real questions for years, hiding behind carefully crafted interviews, but this isn't one of them." The camera zoomed in on Cruz's face, capturing the flicker of frustration breaking through his polished exterior. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair, his shoulders squared, and his famous intensity began to show. "With all due respect," he said, his voice firm and deliberate, "I've never hidden from anything. I've been open about my work, my life, and my dedication to my craft. What exactly are you trying to accuse me of here?" Joy's eyes sparkled with something close to glee, as if she had finally lured him into the trap she set. "What I'm saying, Tom," she declared, "is that you use your platform to promote ideas that many people consider dangerous, and then you expect us all to ignore it and focus on your little stunts and explosions." "My little stunts?" Cruz repeated, his voice rising ever so slightly as his composure began to crack. "Those little stunts employ thousands of people, camera crews, stunt coordinators, sound teams, editors, technicians. Those little stunts generate hundreds of millions of dollars, fueling an industry that supports countless families. Those stunts aren't just explosions, Joy. They're dreams brought to life." Sarah Haynes shifted uncomfortably in her chair, glancing nervously toward Sunny Hostin, who sat stiff and silent, her eyes darting between Cruz and Joy like she was watching a bomb tick down to zero. The audience, too, sat frozen in suspense, knowing they were witnessing something raw, unscripted, and dangerously real. But Joy wasn't done, not even close. She waved her hand dismissively, almost laughing. "Please spare me the economics lecture. This isn't about jobs or money, Tom. It's about you using your fame irresponsibly, and people are tired of it." That was the moment Cruz's tone dropped, his voice becoming low, cold, and sharp, the kind of intensity that made even his biggest movie villains seem tame. "Joy," he said slowly, "you're making accusations without facts, without context, and without respect. I've never forced my beliefs on anyone, never used my platform to hurt people. I've used it to bring joy and excitement to millions across the world." The studio fell silent, so silent that the hum of the cameras could be heard, as Tom Cruise's composure began to fray and Joy Behar's provocation dragged him further into the fire. And this was only the beginning. The energy in the room was shifting with Pa. Every second, building like a storm no one could stop. Cruz sat tall in his chair, his jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on Joy with a laser-like intensity that could cut through steel. "Fringe beliefs," he repeated, his voice calm but burning underneath. "You're throwing around accusations with nothing to back them up." His words weren't shouted, but they carried the weight of thunder, and the audience leaned in, knowing the temperature was about to spike again. Joy crossed her arms and leaned back smugly, relishing every crack she thought she saw forming in his polished image. "Oh, come on, Tom. Don't act innocent. People look up to you, millions of them, and you've been promoting ideas that hurt real people. Don't you think that's worth talking about?" The silence was deafening. Even the co-hosts, usually so quick to jump in with chatter, stayed frozen like statues. Sarah fiddled with her note cards, Sunny's eyes widened, and Whoopi nervously tapped her pen against the table, desperate to break the tension before it detonated. But Tom Cruise wasn't retreating. He was advancing. He leaned forward, his voice cutting with precision. "Joy, with all due respect, I came here in good faith to talk about a film that put food on the table for hundreds of families, a film that pushed creative boundaries, a film that gives audiences a chance to escape and feel inspired. And instead, I get ambushed by accusations that have nothing to do with the reason I'm sitting here today." Whoopi raised her hand, almost pleading. "Maybe we should circle back to the movie, just for a bit, and then—" "No, Whoopi," Cruz cut in sharply, his gaze never breaking from Joy. "Let her finish. I want to hear exactly what she thinks I've done that's so dangerous." The studio audience gasped at his defiance. He wasn't just defending himself anymore. He was throwing down a challenge, and everyone could feel it. Joy's smirk widened, the satisfaction of drawing him into her game evident on her face. "My point, Tom, is that you hide behind your stunt work and your box office numbers. You dazzle people with explosions, but you never answer the tough questions. You've been shielded for too long, and now it's time you face some accountability." Cruz's hand tightened on the armrest of his chair, his knuckles white, his famous composure peeling away layer by layer. "Accountability?" he said, the words seething out of his mouth like fire. "You want to talk about accountability? Let's talk about it then. What about my accountability when I fund literacy programs? What about my accountability when I give scholarships to kids who'd never see a college classroom otherwise? What about my accountability when I personally contribute to disaster relief, quietly, without cameras, without press releases?" His voice rose with each example, hammering home the passion that had been bottled up for too long. The audience erupted in applause, the tide beginning to turn in his favor. Joy's smirk faltered for just a moment, but she quickly masked it with another dismissive wave of her hand. "Publicity stunts, Tom. Hollywood does charity all the time. It's good PR. That's not what this is about, and you know it. That was the spark that set off the fire." Cruz leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "Publicity stunts. You think the families who kept their homes after disasters I helped with care, whether it was a photo op? You think the kids who walked across a graduation stage with scholarships I provided are worried about PR? These aren't stunts, Joy. Their lives changed forever." The tension was unbearable now. Whoopi placed a cautious hand on the table, her voice urgent. "Tom, please, let's not—" But he cut her off again, his focus unshakable. No, Whoopi. She wanted the truth. Let's give it to her. Joy, you've been sitting there accusing me without evidence, questioning my character in front of millions. But let me ask you, when was the last time you actually did your research? When was the last time you came into an interview prepared with facts instead of talking points? Joy's face reddened, her confidence wavering, but she fired back. Don't you dare question my integrity. I've been doing this longer than you've been making movies. Longer? Cruz shot back, his voice razor sharp. Maybe longer, but not better. A real journalist would have asked about the mentoring programs I've built for young actors. A real journalist would have asked about the safety protocols we've pioneered for stunts to protect lives. A real journalist would have asked about the technical innovations we've developed to push cinema forward. But you didn't ask any of that, because it doesn't fit your narrative. The audience erupted again, some cheering, some booing. The studio split down the middle as if a line had been drawn in the sand. Sarah finally found her voice, her tone shaky. Maybe we could, talk about some of those programs now. I think the audience would love to hear about that. But Joy cut her off instantly. No, this is about responsibility. This is about the dangerous influence of celebrities who think they're above criticism. Cruz stood up suddenly, his full frame towering over the set, and the studio collectively held its breath. Dangerous influence? He roared. Joy, you sit here every day influencing millions of viewers with your cynicism, with your negativity, with your personal biases, and you have the audacity to question my influence? His voice cracked like lightning, echoing through the studio as the camera operators scrambled to capture every second of the spectacle. Joy pushed her chair back and stood too, refusing to be overshadowed, her voice sharp and shrill. I don't owe you respect just because you're famous. Respect is earned. And frankly, Tom, you haven't earned it. That line landed like a sledgehammer. Gasps filled the studio, and even Whoopi's mouth dropped open in shock. Cruz's face hardened, his tone dropping to a dangerous calm that was more chilling than any outburst. I haven't earned respect? For 30 years, I've broken my body to entertain audiences. For 30 years, I've shown up prepared, worked harder than anyone, and put myself on the line to create something extraordinary. I've earned the respect of every director, every stuntman, every cinematographer I've ever worked with, and you dare to say I haven't earned it? Joy cut in, her voice trembling with anger, but still defiant. You don't have mine, and you never will. The studio was dead silent again, the cameras locked on the two of them as they faced off like gladiators. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get any more intense, Cruz leaned in, his eyes blazing with fury and fire. You want to talk about accountability, Joy? Fine. Let's talk about your accountability. How many reputations have you tried to destroy for ratings? How many times have you twisted stories to fit your agenda? How many times have you sat in that chair and chosen cynicism over truth just to get a reaction? Joy opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For the first time all morning, her words failed her. The audience erupted again, gasps, claps, cheers, a mix of disbelief and awe. And yet, even as the energy boiled over, it was clear that this was still far from over. Because Tom Cruise wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The studio was crackling with energy, every camera locked on as Joy tried to reclaim her footing. Her voice shook, but she pressed on. This isn't about me, Tom. It's about the dangerous beliefs you promote. Cruise's eyes narrowed, and his voice dropped to a whisper that carried like a shout. Dangerous beliefs? You want to know what's dangerous, Joy? The dangerous idea that disagreeing with the mainstream makes someone an enemy. The dangerous idea that one talk show host gets to decide what millions of people should think. That's the real danger, and you're feeding it. The audience gasped, some clapping, others stunned into silence. Joy looked rattled, her smirk gone, but she tried to push back one more time. I'm here to protect the truth, Tom. Cruz stood tall, his intensity shaking the air. The truth? You don't want truth. You want control. You want the power to shame anyone who dares to think differently. You claim to stand for accountability, but what you really stand for is censorship dressed up as journalism. Whoopi raised her hands, desperate to intervene, but the moment had already spun into history. Joy's face burned red, her words collapsing into stammers as Cruz delivered the final blow. You asked what kind of influence I've had. I've inspired generations to dream bigger, to work harder, to push themselves further. And you? What have you built, Joy? Nothing but negativity, division, and noise. When you're gone, the world won't remember your smirks or your attacks. It'll remember the people you tried to silence, and today, you failed. The studio exploded, half the audience cheering, half booing, chaos erupting as producers scrambled. Joy sat frozen, speechless for the first time in her career, while Tom Cruise straightened his jacket, calm once again. And then came the line that set the internet on fire, the line that turned a talk show scuffle into a global debate. Cruz leaned into the camera, his eyes blazing. You want controversy? Here it is. The real danger isn't what I believe. It's that people like her want to decide what you're allowed to believe. The broadcast cut to commercial, but the damage was done. By the end of the day, the world wasn't just talking about Cruz's movie, they were asking a much bigger, more dangerous question. And that's the showdown that shook daytime TV to its core. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Tom Cruise went too far, or was Joy Behar the one out of line? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next explosive story.